What's up, everybody? Dan Kelly here with my partner in crime, Sal the Slab Guy. And tonight we are talking to superstar comic artist, J.G. Jones.
Superstar.
So thank you for agreeing to speak with us. We weren't able to catch up with you at Baltimore Comic Con. When we came by your booth, you were actually kind of sitting off to the back drawing something. So we didn't want to disturb you or anything. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to sit down and talk with us.
Of course. Baltimore's always crazy busy for me, so I'm surprised I had a chance to pick my head up at all.
Hey, busy is good, right?
Busy is great, man.
Yeah.
And Baltimore was crowded. I remember that.
Yeah. It was a good show this year.
Excellent show.
All right, so let's just go ahead and jump right into it. I was looking into you, and it said when I was looking at your career, it said you broke into the industry in 1994 drawing Dark Dominion for Defiant Comics. So how did you break in? How did you get that gig?
People are gonna hate me so much.
I'm gonna love this answer. I'm gonna love it.
I was working at a newspaper in Brooklyn, a weekly. And a friend of mine also was in the comics there. So I decided I saw the writing on the wall with newspaper and decided to get out, and always had an interest in comics. And my friend at the paper, we'd go every Wednesday down to the comic book shop up the block from work at lunch. And, it was just our hobby. So we wrote a little comic together, and I drew like 8 or 9 pages of it and took it, and this is no joke, literally through the snow in Manhattan, because they had that show in the dead of winter, and there is no West Side train service, so you have to walk 5 blocks.
Wow.
Took it. I, honest to God, I hadn't been reading a lot of comics well, that's not true. Through the 80s, when I was in graduate school, I'd stopped reading, but I had started again in the early 90s. So I didn't really know people by sight in the business at all. So my friend said, show it to this guy. And I just plopped my portfolio in front of this gentleman who turned out to be Jim Shooter, and he flipped through it and said, could I get you to come in on Monday? And that was the beginning of my comic career.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's a pretty good person to show your portfolio to.
Yeah, I guess for some odd reason he was looking for somebody a little bit different, and I just happened to be there.
Right spot, the right time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, totally.
Right time. So you worked for some indie companies for a few years before you ended up going over to Marvel. How did you get the gig at Marvel?
Well, I worked for Billy Tucci for a year or two, drawing she-books, and Billy was pals with Jimmy Palmiotti and Joe Quesada, and they all drank at the same bar and hung out in town. So I got to know the guys before I ever got to work for them, and I would bring my work in. Jimmy was always interested in what I was up to. So when they started Marvel Nights, he said, I think I have something for you, and called me in and wanted me to draw Black Widow. And
yeah, I was gonna say your first series was as a regular artist was Black Widow, and then in that book you and the writer Devin Grayson created the new Black Widow, Yelena Belova. What was it like going, and it's like, all right, here's your first regular penciling gig at Marvel, and oh, by the way, you're creating a brand new character too.
It was great. That was the best experience, because Marvel Nights was in a completely separate part of the office. We had our own little penthouse rooftop offices.
Oh, nice.
But by the same token, they almost didn't let us hang out down at the old bullpen or anything. It was 3 issues of magic. I penciled it, I inked it, and I did black and white wash tones on it.
Mm.
And the book was colored beautifully and written. The story was compelling. Um, so I just really didn't want to let that opportunity slip by. I wanted to bring my A game all the way. Um,
Definitely did
I,
there.
Yeah.
You definitely
thanks.
did that.
So what's it like creating a character for a company like Marvel where, they're going to own the character? Then Yelena has obviously become a pretty popular character and gone on to do a lot of stuff. Like, do you still follow what they do with the character, or do you kind of remove yourself from it? Like, and how do you feel that other creators, what do you like or not like about what they've done with her?
Oh, I pop in from time to time. I like the character, always have. Um, I haven't started reading the new series yet,
That just came out. That
but
just
I did
came
read
out.
the first issue and I really enjoyed it.
Mm.
I'll probably jump in when they get about 5 or 6 under their belt. That's the way I tend to read comics rather than monthly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do a
I
little
read
bit,
in
little
chunks.
yeah, like a little binge type of situation, huh? You binge it.
Yep, yep.
All right, wait.
Yep.
My daughter is handing me a yellow cup that she wants me to open for her.
So let me ask you.
Oh,
So let me ask you this: while Dan's opening the cup, you sounds like you're still collecting comics as well. Do you have a pretty large collection?
I don't really collect comics at all. I read them
Okay.
and then I usually pass them along to friends of
Okay.
mine. Like,
Okay.
I think you might like this or that, and um, we also have a rule in my house, which is I
Mm,
don't know if you can see the bookshelves behind me.
I
Yeah.
see.
Um, for every book that comes in, one has to leave. So,
Oh.
I have the same rule for my daughter's toys.
yeah, there you go.
So, again, going back to how you created Yelena, they introduced her in the MCU in the Black Widow movie. She was in the Hawkeye
Mm.
show. They're going to be doing a lot more with her. Are you happy with how they have her portrayed in the MCU in live action?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love the Hawkeye series. I thought it was terrific.
Me too.
Um,
I liked it.
and they picked the right book to riff off of.
Yeah.
You know, that was such a good read,
Yeah.
and the art was amazing on that book.
Yeah, I really enjoyed them casting Florence Pugh as Yelena. Like, she was my favorite part of the Black Widow movie. I thought she was just
Yeah,
fantastic in it.
I agree.
Yeah, she's got a real sly humor
Yeah,
that I like
Hmm.
about her.
yeah. Um, so another character you created at Marvel was you did the Marvel Boy miniseries with Grant Morrison. How did that book come together? What was it like working with him on that?
I was pretty much looking for something to do right after I got done with Black Widow, and Jimmy again came to me and said, we're going to amp up this party a little bit. You want to work with Grant Morrison? And I really had only read The Invisibles, I guess, at that point by him, and didn't have a lot of familiarity, but I definitely liked the sort of outsider take that he had with superheroes, and it was a romp all the way. Um,
Nice.
I
Yeah,
just tried to go for that high energy um, the entire way.
it is a really cool book. I enjoyed that series, and I felt like it was something that was definitely a bit different than the other stuff that Marvel was doing at the time.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree.
it was a ton of work though because we had to redesign everything.
Yeah.
I couldn't draw a
Oh, yeah.
single page without doing the design work first. So
Oh,
Did you have a lot of lead time on it to like get all that done, or was it kind of just flying by the seat of your pants?
no, that was kind of the old days when we had more lead time. Now I don't know how they get books out. Um, they're pushing right up past deadline,
yeah.
Yeah,
which
I
I
saw that.
hate.
I was gonna say I saw that with that Black Label Lex Luthor book that Brian Hitch said they put the first issue out too soon because they put the first issue out and he only had 4 pages of the second issue done. He's like, it's gonna take more time.
Dude, I'm feeling that pain so hard.
So,
That's,
what were you saying, Sal?
no, I said that. That was funny. That was good.
Yeah. So after you had a couple years at Marvel, you went to DC, and then the first book you did was that, and I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong, the Wonder Woman Hi-
The
Hikidia.
Hikatea.
Yeah.
Hey, I had to be schooled on it too.
So you did that book with Greg Rucka, but it was before I guess it was his first Wonder Woman story, right before he
Yeah.
became like the regular series writer. So, what was it like working on that graphic novel with him?
Um, well, I signed a contract that I don't know if they even do those anymore over at DC. They wanted to get me away from Marvel. Um, so I went over and I heard about this script that was rattling around the offices and thought it was really interesting. And I basically just asked if I could do it,
Oh,
and they let me.
wow.
Um,
So he had
so
it completely written before you came on as the artist?
yeah, and I think somebody else had bailed out on the project for whatever reason, and it didn't have an artist attached. So I sort of attached myself to it because I love the project so much, love the story.
Yeah, I mean,
That's awesome.
yeah, that was a cool book. Uh, that kind of reminds me of a while ago. I did a interview with Bob McLeod. He talked about
Mm.
working in the old Marvel bullpen, and said, you would go in sometimes, and even if you didn't have an assignment, then you would just go in because they would just come out and be like, "We need someone for this book," and you'd be like, "I'll do it." So that sounds kind of like the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Um, just luck, man. My whole career has just been stumbling into one great project after the next.
Well, you
You
got to
can't
have the
beat that.
talent to do it too. So you've definitely got that.
That's also true.
Yeah.
It's mostly nerves and
Well,
fear of failure, I guess.
well, I saw around the same time that you did the Wonder Woman book, you co-created Wanted with Mark Millar. So
Eh,
how did that book come together? How was it collaborating with him to create that, which was, I guess, what the first book under his Millar World imprint?
Yeah. I was a fan of his stuff all the way back to the Authority, um,
mm,
and the whole Marvel, what was it called? The Ultraverse or whatever
Or
it
the
was called.
Ultimate?
Yeah, the
Ultimate, yeah.
Ultimate Universe.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I was reading all that stuff and loving it. And just like with the Hikatea book, I kind of basically called him up and said, um, "Do you have anything that you would let me work on with you?" And he sent me 3 scripts. One was called The Unfunnies. One was
Okay.
called American Jesus, which I think now is a television show called something else.
Yeah, on
Um,
Netflix. I forget what the
yeah.
name of it is, but yeah.
And the final one was Wanted. And obviously, I gravitated towards that
Mhm.
because it was just like deconstructing the whole superhero mythos and being a bit of a brat.
I mean, yeah,
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
yeah, it was a really cool book. I remember
Mhm.
reading it for the first time, be like, man, this is really fun. And like with a lot of the stuff he writes, like, oh, he finds ways to put a new spin on stuff.
Mm,
Mhm.
Um, I saw one of the things you did was you based a lot of the characters' looks on real people. Like the main character, looks like Eminem, and there's the character that
right.
looks like Halle Berry. How did you choose, which which people you were going to base these characters on? Was it anything that Mark had an idea of what he wanted them to look like, or was that something that was
Yeah.
your choice?
No, that was pretty straight up simple. It was Mark would put in the script, this person looks like so and so, act choose an actor. Um, so that
Mm.
was all him. So if you know, if they're gonna sue somebody, sue Mark, please. not me.
How is it when you're doing the art and you're like, all right, so this has to look like this person? Is it more difficult, when you're drawing it to get them to look like the person they're supposed to look like, as opposed to just making up what they're going to look like?
Not particularly. I use some photo ref initially, and then you just get used to drawing the character, um, and you don't really need the reference so much anymore. But
Okay, that's
I
pretty cool.
really enjoyed drawing the Rogues Gallery. There were so
Yeah.
many
yeah.
fun villains in that book. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Well, like we said, that was the first book that he did under the Millar World imprint. So, and you said he sent you 3 scripts and you chose Wanted. So was there an idea of what he would eventually grow this to?
No, not really. He had just come out of working at Marvel, obviously, and I think maybe he had an incipient idea of growing this into something, but at the time it was sort of a side hustle.
Oh yeah,
And for me too, because I went right back in.
Mm.
right back into DC, right?
Yeah, you're never guaranteed, where you're if
Yeah,
it's going to be a hit when it was independent at that time. We
That's
got lucky again.
yeah, that's very true.
yeah. I mean, lucky enough that was a few years later in 2008 they turned it into the live action movie. Did you get have any type of consulting that they did with you for the movie? I know that they didn't cast they cast different actors, not the ones that the characters were physically based on, but did they come to you for any kind of consulting for the movie?
No, they did Mark. They were kind enough to invite me to be on the set for a few nights when they were shooting in Chicago, and that was fun. Um, James McAvoy wasn't like a big name at the time,
Yeah.
Right.
and he was just a guy on the set, and he was such a sweetheart, such a kind person, not like a snobby actor or whatever you think.
Yeah.
But
Well, that's cool.
yeah,
because the big names at the time were Morgan Freeman and Angelina Jolie.
Jolie. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. So were you happy with how the movie turned out?
Yeah, sure. I was most happy about getting to eat at craft services for a couple of nights. It's not
Nice.
bad.
Yeah. I mean, I always like at the office that I work in, whenever people are having meetings, I'm like, oh, they're getting lunch delivered, which means that I'm going to get to pick at it, so I don't have to worry about lunch today.
Free lunch.
Yeah,
Free lunch. Yeah.
I think that's kind of a universal thing. No matter what you work in, it's like, oh, free lunch. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm always down for free lunch.
So, and then he's brought the characters back now. At the end of the second Nemesis book, and then he's doing that big what's it called, big game, the big crossover between all the Millar World books. So did you ever think that after that miniseries that that these characters would come back again?
I always was hopeful that there'd be a sequel. So Mark was very kind when he got ready to sell all his properties to Netflix. And I think all of his co-creators got a nice check in the mail. So, at from my point of view, it's always, well, thank you. Do what you want at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So has he talked with you at all about the book he's doing now, where he's using those characters again?
Not directly. They just had me do a cover for them.
Yeah.
That's about it. I haven't talked to Mark in a couple of years.
All right. Well, I mean, hopefully you guys will do something together again one day, because that book was it was fantastic.
Yeah, most definitely.
He's always a good guy. He's fun.
So one of the things that's though too I want to ask about is when you were working for DC, one of the projects you did was the 52 series, where they released a book a week for an entire year. And I remember, I remember when that came out, like it was really, because it was a really good book at the time.
Yeah.
DC, was firing in all cylinders. It's like, oh, that's great. I get this new issue every week. I don't have to wait a whole month. But what was it like for you producing covers for a weekly series that ran for an entire year?
Um, Everybody else was working hard. It was working easier for me.
Oh yeah.
Um, Knock out a cover a week, that's a piece of cake.
Oh
You
man.
know, after doing books and books and books, 30 pages a month or whatever, um, that suddenly became easy.
Did you have a lot of lead time on that to make sure that you would
Yeah, yeah,
yes
we
good
did. We were way out ahead of that. We had to be because there were at least 4 or 5 writers on that, and uh,
Yeah.
do- probably a dozen artists. So we really had all the planning meetings were done almost a year in advance.
Oof.
Um,
I was gonna say because each cover is it's not like none of the covers are really like, oh, here's a generic, Superman heroic pose. Like each cover is representative of what's in that issue. So
yeah,
I imagine that was something that, would take a little bit of extra time too.
it was. I like doing that. I like having stuff that's tied to the book. Despite having created any number of heroic poses, I always like doing story oriented stuff um, on my covers.
And you did
Just
I say,
go
and
ahead.
you did the interiors on one of the issues as well, didn't you?
No, no, I didn't
No.
draw any of the interiors. Like I said, I had the easy job.
Oh.
I just had to be brilliant for a day or two.
How long did it take you to do each one of the covers? Like, did it take you a week to do each one, or were you able to like knock out a few a week?
um, Sometimes if I had script, I could knock out a couple a week. Um, I was always ahead of them, ahead of the artists, usually ahead of the next scripts. Um, the only time it got tight for me was they didn't have the Christmas issue ready for me to go,
Uh,
um, or the issue that I had to draw the week of Christmas, I should say. I guess it was
Oh,
going to be published a couple months after. But my deadline was the week of Christmas, and I was leaving to go see my family.
right.
And they let me know it had to be done before I left. So basically, I have one day,
oh,
and that was the cover where Renee Montoya is stenciled on the wall.
oh
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
That's a good one.
literally cut a stencil out and spray painted it and sent the cover in.
Wow. That's awesome.
One day.
Merry Christmas. Get this
Merry
done.
Christmas. Ho, ho,
And I'm out.
ho.
Well, but there was one book that came after that you were the interior artist, right? On Final Crisis, where I saw
Yeah.
you were the artist on it, and you did the first 3 issues, but then they brought in other artists to complete the book.
Yeah.
Was that something where it was always intended to have different artists come in, or was it just
No,
an
no.
issue
I
with a
was supposed
deadline?
to do the whole thing. Um, the problem was twofold. It was 30 pages per issue. I was penciling and inking, painting 2 covers, and also I had another cover gig. I forget what it was at the time over at DC. So I'm trying to do all of this work by myself, and I started to have some health problems that would be um, the beginning of my bone marrow cancer was
Oh,
showing up right about that time. And I just physically couldn't do it anymore. It's completely burned out. I was passing out at the drawing table.
Ugh,
Um,
oh,
so we had to
that's
bring
hard.
in, but I got to work with Carlos Pacheco, which was great, such a sweetheart. And some of the other guys were jumped in and helped me out to get through the end of it. Um,
That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. That's cool. So on the Final Crisis books, I love the you have two covers that I really like. One was of course the GL cover because I'm just a big GL fan. But you had another Batman there, and the Batman was on issue 6, I believe.
I think so.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and it really reminds me, and I'm going to compare you to who I consider an artist legend too, is Alex Ross. The way it looked, it was very similar. It had the same feel to me, and the way the features are drawn on there are just amazing. I love that cover.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's,
So you also did a couple of other GL books, and you did some from Volume 4. But there's one in particular. There was one that you did the bombshell cover for Carol Ferris.
oh
That you
yeah.
I love the bombshell covers. They were awesome. I was picking them up, faster than I could, pay for them almost.
Yeah, those.
But did you do it? I don't know if you did any more of the other bombshells.
Let's
Was it
see.
just the Carol Ferris one? I believe because that's what it looked like to me. But
I
did you have fun?
know.
Did you have much input on creating that bombshell cover?
Not too much. They kind of told me what they wanted, and I
Okay.
did it. Wasn't too complicated.
Yeah.
I think I did
No, it's not.
one other one, maybe Italia or something. I don't recall.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to look that one up.
I
Now.
don't know if they ever published it. Maybe they hated
Oh,
it and didn't publish it. I don't know.
it went to the scrap floor. Fell on
Yeah,
the scrap heap.
possibly.
Oh, that's a shame. I'll have to Google that after the interview and see if I can find it. See what happened to it. But there was one more variant cover I want to talk about, and I'll give the
Hmm.
questions back to Dan. There was a Batman and Robin number 25 where it was like a puzzle piece cover.
Yeah.
That was phenomenal, awesome cover. Can you tell me a little bit more about that one? Did you have the idea for that one, or did they pretty much tell you, "Oh, make it like this" type situation?
No, I think that was my own twisted brain. I'm
Oh,
always looking for a
it
different
is really
approach.
cool, and you have a couple of the pieces missing in the puzzle. That was nice. That was really good.
Was that for Detective or for Batman
Uh,
Robin?
Batman and Robin. It was number 25.
Yeah, that was a cool cover.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No problem. All right, Dan, go ahead. Back to your set of questions. Dan. Sorry, this has been an interlude by Sal. All right, back to Dan.
Well, you said that your cancer prevented you from finishing the Final Crisis book. Was there anything else where that that it affected your career? Like, were there any other gigs that you
Hmm.
weren't able to do because of that?
I had to sort of change the way I worked. Um, it was once I got diagnosed, it was very treatable for years until it wasn't anymore. Um, but I became more of a cover artist um, because that monthly grind, I just couldn't count on something happening again, like happened on Final Crisis. But I did draw a few more books along the way. Um, I think the comedian, some other stuff. I don't recall. It's been a 30-year career, so
Yeah, I mean it's been a nice
I
long.
may have forgotten a few things.
So you were saying I didn't know that you had cancer. Is that something that you're still fighting, or is it something that you're in remission on? Or
Um, I had a stem cell transplant 5 years ago. So cancer's gone.
that's
It's
fantastic.
That's good to
it
know.
is great. Um,
That's good.
just a lot of residual. Anytime you get a transplant, there's always stuff along the way, but dealing with it and working a lot.
Yeah.
So happy to be
Okay.
back.
So
Good.
so I had noticed that the past few years you'd switched, like you said, you still do some interior, but that you'd switched to being more of a cover artist than an interior artist. So is that the primary reason why?
Yeah, that was exactly it. I just I couldn't keep up and didn't want something to come up and have to bail out on commitments. Um, trying to be a good professional. Um, so if I did cover gigs, um, I could keep up.
Well, that's
Good.
fantastic. Congratulations on beating it. I know that's a whatever achievements you do professionally, that's probably the best one that you can get in
Yeah,
life.
that's true. That is true.
Yeah, I was lucky. I have great doctors, and we've been keeping on top of it. So
Good, good.
all good.
Well, that's fantastic. So, well, you said you still have work doing some interiors. One of them was in 2012 when you and Brian Azzarello, when DC did that Before Watchmen series, and they had the different books for all the characters, and you did the one on the comedian. So, what was it like working on that series? Like, what because that was the first time DC did anything. Going back to the Watchmen, which a lot of people consider that the greatest comic series ever
Yeah.
produced. What was it like going back and telling an original story based on that? Like, was there any kind of pressure that you guys felt, or that any of the other creators felt on it?
I think you'd be lying if you said no. And I initially didn't want to do the project
Oh,
Oh yeah,
because I kind of considered the source material to be done. Um, but Dan kind of twisted my arm and talked me into it. Um, and I'd always wanted to work with Brian, so that's how he wrote me in. Uh,
yeah,
100
nice.
Bullets was like just one of my favorite reads, and he was another on my bucket list. It's like I want to work with this guy. So
yeah. So there were a lot of different Before Watchmen series. Was did all the creative teams, did you all kind of work together to figure out what you were doing, or was it just because they were all self-contained stories, was it just all right, we're doing this, and we're not really worrying about whatever they're doing with Silk Spectre or with Minutemen or anything
yeah,
like
I
that?
think that the writers kind of all got together either at DC or individually with DC, and they had the plan. So for me, it was just drawing my particular story, um, and hoping that Adam Hughes didn't ruin it too hard for everybody else.
Nice. That's funny.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that you decided to do the comedian book,
Yeah.
because it was really good. The covers, especially like one of them I have on here. Like, I love this cover for issue
Oh,
5, where you have the smiley face on the
Yeah.
skull.
thanks.
Like, that's a fantastic
That was
cover.
kind of a brutal
And it really,
issue. Yeah.
yeah, but it really fits with with the way the character
Yeah.
is too.
Yeah. I always loved that character. And um, after Adam had chosen first, they pretty much gave me my choice. And I chose comedian based on the fact that I loved the comedian character and the fact that Brian
Yeah,
was going to write it. That was a win-win for me.
yeah, I think it was a win-win for everybody that picked up the
Absolutely.
book. Of all the Before Watchmen ones, that was one of the
Oh,
better ones,
thanks. Thank
I
you.
Yeah.
thought. And I saw in 2015 you also did the interior art for with uh, you did the book with Mark Wade, Strange Fruit, that was set during the Great Mississippi Flood in
Yeah.
1927. But on that one, you did, instead of doing painted, or instead of doing traditional comic art, you did painted art. So what was it that went into creating that series, and that had you make the decision that you were going to paint all of it as opposed to doing pencil and ink?
Um, the choice was simply, um, I'm crazy. And I'm my own worst enemy. So
Uh-huh.
I'd been painting covers for so many years, and I was like, well, let's see if we can paint a whole book. Why not? Um, so yeah, wrote that with Mark, and
What's it like working with Mark Wade then? What's he like?
Mark and I have been friends for a long time, and we had never done a book together. So it's typical. We're both busy all the time. We keep saying, "Oh, let's work together. Let's work together." And finally, we're just like, "Okay, let's do something." And we sat down and put that together. Um,
Hmm.
So what was it like doing that book, where it took place in a not so great point in the nation's history, with with the race divide and then having it based around a real life event. You have to do a lot of research on it.
Yeah, I'm a big history junkie. I read a lot of history, and I grew up in South Louisiana, and Mark grew up in Alabama. My little hometown, um, right next door, was David Duke's office front, where he had
Oh,
the white robe and hood in the
Oh,
window front. So
oh,
when I would go get my hair cut, I had to walk past that. And even as a kid, it just creeped me out. I'd be like, why would you even do that?
yeah.
So growing
yeah.
up down there, the Mississippi River and tales of the flood and everything were always ubiquitous. Um, it's the reason they built the levee system all the way up and down the Mississippi River. Um, so just my interest in history and everything, I wanted to do that. And I was pretty pleased with the way it came out. And the reception was not always the best, but hey, you do what you do and you don't worry about it.
Eh,
I mean, I enjoyed the book. I thought, especially the artwork, just looked fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then with the with the character that just kind of arrived and couldn't communicate. Like I remember reading it, thinking like, because you keep seeing him looking at books and stuff, you keep thinking that at some point he'll just start talking. That he'll figure it out, but he never really does. He finds other ways to communicate, and then he's just just as quickly as he arrived, he's gone. Was there any thought about revisiting that character or doing something with him again, since he just kind of disappeared and it was
Yeah,
kind of left
I
to
had
him?
a number of further stories in mind, that involved, one of the characters coming back up to Philadelphia and, picking back up during World War II, in
Oh,
Philadelphia where they were building the Liberty ships and stuff. But time moves on, and
eh,
busy doing other things. It's never enough time.
do you think
of course.
it's something that you'll ever revisit?
Possibly. I'm working on a new book that's set in the 30s. It's not associated with strange fruit, but it's
What's the what's that about? Can you tell us anything about that?
yeah, I can tell you a little bit. It just was teased at New York Comic Con. It's called Dust to Dust, and it's basically take the Dust Bowl and stir in a serial killer. Um,
Oh,
He's using the giant dust storms to cover his tracks. Um, so I wrote it with a friend of mine named Phil Bram. He's not done any other comics. I wrote it with him years ago, over a decade ago, and it's been sitting in my hip pocket all these years. Been meaning to get to it, but people keep offering me projects, and I have a hard time saying no. And
yeah.
so finally, after I had my stem cell transplant, I was like, what am I waiting for? If I'm ever going to get this done, I'm going to do it now. Um, so it's coming out through Image, I think in May, and it's through the Giant Generator imprint with Rick Remender. Um, he was kind enough to
Oh,
offer
okay.
to publish through his imprint. So I'm super excited and working like a madman again.
All right, so here we go. We had some technical difficulties there, but we are back up and going now. So, uh, yeah, Mr. Jones, thank you for bearing with us. And for anyone out there that wants to check him out online, you can see the links below. There's the link to his Instagram and to his Facebook, and then he also has one on a newer one, Blue Sky,
Blue
which
sky.
is on there too. I'm not on that one. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. But yeah, I'll toggle through them for the rest of this. So yeah, so in 2015, you did the miniseries Strange Fruit with Mark Wade that's set during the Great Mississippi Flood of 1927. What was it that went into creating that series with the two of you?
Well, Mark and I had always wanted to work together. I've known Mark um, almost my entire career, and we kind of worked with each other a little bit at DC, but not on anything directly that he wrote and I drew. So Boom was willing to pretty much do whatever we wanted, and
Oh, nice.
we talked about it and put together this book called Strange Fruit, because we both grew up in the South, and both are history junkies. So the 1927 flood just seemed like an interesting place to drop a little story in.
Yeah. How did you come up with the name Strange Fruit to go with the story?
It's from the old song.
Which song was that? I'm trying to think of it.
It's called Strange Fruit.
Oh, well, yeah, that makes sense there. So when you did the interior art for it, instead of doing the kind of traditional art, you did all painted art. So what made you decide that you were going to go that route instead of doing the traditional pencil and ink?
I've always done a lot of watercolor work, especially on covers,
Hmm.
and I wanted to sort of see if I could paint a book. And also, I just thought that fully rendered art like that would lend itself to this kind of story we were doing. Like, it's not traditional spandex superheroes, so
Yeah.
I wanted the artwork to be interesting in another way, really lush. Um, that whole thing with the flood and it's raining constantly. The watercolor just seemed to be the right call to make that sort of saturated color.
Yeah, I mean the artwork in it is absolutely gorgeous. I remember when I read it, that was the first thing that drew me in was the painted art that looked so good. And then of course when you start reading it, you get drawn into the story as well.
Oh,
Uh,
fell for it. Good.
but it kind of ends where where you've got this alien character that comes down and he never really learns to communicate with language. He kind of figures out a way to communicate with people through math. And um spoiler alert for anyone that hasn't read it yet, he kind of gets washed away at the end, but there's no definitive end on what happened with him, just kind of speculation. Was there ever an intention to go back and do another story with him, or is there still an intention to do something like that?
Um, well, I did have another story planned afterwards, picking up with one of the characters that's in the story, the engineer from
Hmm.
Philadelphia. And I had planned to have the big silent guy turn up again
Oh,
later on. In my mind, he doesn't drown at all. He's just swept away by the flood. Um, but you know, I had to move on. I had other things on tap, so um, maybe one day I'll get back to writing that story.
yeah, I mean that's kind of how I took it at the end of it. I was like, all right, this guy is so powerful at all this stuff that he does. Like he's not just going to get washed away by a flood and that be that with him. So that's kind of how I took it. So I know you worked a lot at a lot of different companies over your career, but you're primarily known, I think, for your work with DC. You've done the most amount of work with them.
Yeah.
What was it like working with them compared to working with some of the other companies like Marvel or some of the other indie companies?
Um, it was great being at Marvel at the time I was when Marvel Knights was getting up and running. Um, Made a lot of friends there and still friends throughout my whole career. Um, but DC was actually paying, you know, artists to come over and hang out exclusively and work for them at the time. I don't know how many exclusive contracts they do anymore, but when you're a freelancer, health coverage is kind of a
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah.
So that was really the main reason I went over, and always loved the DC characters, Wonder Woman, Batman. Everybody wants to work on that stuff. So why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. I mean, there's some of the most iconic characters. I always think though, one big distinction between DC characters and Marvel, just with the aesthetic, is, all the big DC characters have that logo. Like Batman's got the chest logo, and Wonder Woman and Superman and Green Lantern and Flash and all these guys. And there are some, the X with the X-Men and the four for Fantastic Four, but some of the other ones, like, yeah, there's Captain America and Spider-Man stuff you can get stuff from, but it's not like as pronounced as it is with DC characters.
Yeah, they really mark it right up front.
Yeah. But are you still under contract with DC?
Oh no, no, no.
No.
That ship sailed a long time ago. I don't even know if they do exclusive contracts anymore.
Yeah. Um well, you've also done a lot of you've done a lot of interior art over your career, but I think you're known more for your prolific cover art. What's the difference between doing covers and doing interior art? And do you have a preference one way or the other for it?
I truly love both because it uses a different part of your head. Um, when I'm working on the cover, the whole job is to try and get someone interested enough to pick up the book, um, to just grab eyeballs. And when you're drawing an interior, obviously, it's more like you're making a film. There's pacing involved and all kinds of different nuances that you don't really get to play with on covers. So I like to do both. I like to go back and forth as it exercises a different part of my brain.
Do you find one to be more difficult or one to be easier than the other?
Covers are always easier.
Yeah.
Such a big chunk of work to do a monthly book, um, especially if, like me, you're usually doing the whole job. I don't use inkers anymore. I haven't for years. And a lot of times I'm doing wash tones before it even gets to the colorist, or painting the book. So it's a ton of work,
Yeah,
and
it sounds
really
like.
have to be committed to it. So covers are great just to pull you out for a little bit and let you um, have fun.
So when you're doing the interiors on a book, since you said that you don't use inkers anymore, you do it all yourself. Do you find that that you pencil the same way now that you did when you would be sending it off to someone else to ink, or do you find that you do the pencils a little bit looser because you know that you yourself are going to be the one going back and finishing it?
Yeah, I pencil really tight with the figures and faces and stuff, but the backgrounds, I have them kind of roughed in. I know what I'm going to do and where the lighting is going to fall, but I don't tighten it up until I ink. Um, it takes me a little time. Sometimes I'll just have pages and pages of um, roughed in backgrounds with the figures inked, and I'll go back and do all the backgrounds at the same time.
Okay, yeah. Oh, should make a note to everyone, anybody that's still watching this. Yes, Sal. When we had the technical difficulties, Sal unfortunately dropped out and wasn't able to get back on. So we didn't uh, we didn't throw him away. He didn't disappear. He's still out there in the world.
Not an alien abduction. He's fine.
No. Um, so yeah, so you've worked on a ton of characters throughout your career. Obviously, since you've worked more for DC, you've worked more on them. But you worked on a lot of the characters like Black Widow and Marvel Boy and stuff. We talked about Marvel. You did the series of covers for Avengers when Jeff Johns was having part of his run on it.
Yep.
Are there any characters that you haven't gotten to work on that you'd really like to be able to take a stab at?
Yeah. I think there's probably a lot. Conan would be fun.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I've ever done any Conan professionally, but I've done a ton just for my own fun.
Yeah.
It's one of those characters. Obviously, I read all the books back in the day, and I got to do Doc Savage a lot at DC because I had the license.
Oh yeah, on First Wave.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
those
love
are,
all that
those
pulp
are fantastic covers.
and yeah, I think like John Carter of Mars would be a ton of fun.
So you like to work on a lot of the old pulp type stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I grew up with that stuff, and it's nostalgic for me. So
Oh yeah, I love that stuff like that and the Shadow, and even though it wasn't technically pulp because it came out later, but a character like the Rocketeer like really fit
oh,
into that. Like, I love all those old ones.
that same flavor, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so of all the characters you've worked on, do you have a favorite that you've worked on?
No, really, I've thought about it. I get asked that question.
Yeah.
I've had really good fortune in my career to be able to draw a lot of different characters, and especially doing as many covers as I have. I've probably crossed most of the characters from Marvel and DC, and Wildstorm before they got folded into DC. I did a lot of covers for them. Um, it's been all over the place, so I've been pretty lucky.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say probably when you did that 52, the covers for the 52 series, you probably covered a pretty good scope of the DC characters with that.
Yeah, most definitely, and Final Crisis as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm sure, as an artist, I'm sure that you get a lot of commission requests. In fact, like, when we went to talk with you at Baltimore Comic Con, you were, kind of sitting there working on commissions. So we're like, all right, we're not gonna bother them or disturb them. So what would you say is the coolest commission request that you ever gotten where you were like, oh yeah, like I hadn't thought of that, but that'll turn out really good.
I remember one that was probably the most fun. I don't know if I executed it the best, but a guy had a superhero wine theme book.
Oh,
So
like a
I
sketchbook?
smashing grapes.
Oh, what, he had like a sketchbook with.
Yeah, that was his sketchbook theme.
Oh, that's cool.
So
Who
that
and
was
who was it you drew smashing grapes?
Hulk smashing grapes.
Yeah, I did another interview a while ago with Bob McLeod, and I asked him that question, and he said the coolest request he ever got to do a commission was someone wanted to draw Craven the Hunter and sitting in a chair, but then all the heads behind him, where it would be like animal heads, like for trophies,
Yeah,
instead of animal heads, that it would be all superhero heads.
I love it.
Yeah, I was like, man, that does sound pretty cool. I'll have to request that. Now, on the flip side, I'm sure you've gotten some pretty strange requests too. What would you say is the weirdest or strangest request that you've ever gotten to do a commission for?
Um, I know there've been a few like oddly kinky things that I wasn't really very interested in doing.
Yeah.
So I was just like, that's your thing. I'm gonna pass.
Yeah, I hear that like every comic artist I talk to when I ask them that, it's always goes to, yeah, there's somebody wanted this character drawn naked or some kind of weird sex thing like that. So
Yeah.
uh
I had someone come up at San Diego many years ago, and he waited in line to open up his book and show me his panty collection. You can't make this stuff up.
did he want you to draw on one of them?
I think he wanted me to draw on the page, and I didn't want to touch anything.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to touch that either. Well, I mean, like, congratulations, sir. You can go ahead and move on.
Yes.
Uh-huh. So, so I saw that Iron Maiden is getting ready to release a graphic novel based on their album art, and that you're doing the cover for it. I mean,
Yep.
that's pretty cool to me. Were you an Iron Maiden fan before you got this gig?
Oh, I love all the good old stuff.
Oh, that's fantastic. Is that what's going to be the cover?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That does look like a classic Iron Maiden album.
I did recently did I guess last year too an Anthrax. So
Nice.
had to do an Iron Maiden, and I'm hoping some other metal bands will come calling.
Oh
Monster.
yeah,
I'm down for Monster Magnet.
yeah. I love Anthrax. That's my favorite. My two favorite metal bands are Anthrax and Motorhead. So,
I'm here for you, Motorhead.
oh, yeah, yeah. Here, even here, one of the little things I got,
I love it.
a little Eddie that my daughter likes to play with when she comes down here.
It's great.
So other than the Iron Maiden thing, is there any any other upcoming projects that you have coming up that we should keep a lookout for?
Yeah, we just announced my new book at New York. I wasn't there, but Rick Remender is publishing my new book under his imprint, Giant Generated Image, and it's called Dust to Dust, and it's set in the Dust Bowl in Oklahoma in the 1930s, and it's a lot of murder and mayhem and horribleness. So,
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. And when is it that's getting released?
I think we're looking at May.
May. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to make a note to keep an eye out on that. Do you have any other projects coming up, or are you focused on that right now?
This eating my entire life right now, so I'm just grinding away every day on this project.
How far into it are you? How much more do you have to go?
Um, I am about 4 issues in and have about that much more to go.
All right. Oh, 8 issues. The more the better. Without giving anything away in the story, is it something that you could potentially, when the story ends, that you could potentially go back to it later on, or is it just this is the beginning, middle, end of the story, and that's it?
It's a self-contained story, but I do have plans for some of the characters to do sort of spin-off stories, not set in the same place, but traveling. Um, yeah, I definitely have plans to stay in this world. Um,
And do you think you'll focus on that more going forward with your career, with more creator-owned stuff, as opposed to working on stuff for Marvel and DC?
I never say never about anything,
Hmm.
um, but I do really prefer to work for myself these days. Um, I had a lot of stuff that I had written along the way that I had to put in my back pocket because I was trying to make a living working for the companies. And now I'd really um, like to do stuff I've been sitting on forever and ever. I'd like to do more straight up illustration work too, if possible. I've been playing around with some like Lord of the Rings illustrations for years, and
Oh, cool.
I think it would be a lot of fun just to do like some straight illustration.
Like I know some artists occasionally will publish their own, like publish their sketchbooks or an art book that's just this is not a story, this is just art. You think you might do anything like that?
Um, I'm putting together right now a a book of all my Marvel stuff with a little bit of new material. Um, my art dealer is helping me put everything together, and that's going to get announced pretty soon. I think we're going to kickstart it. So
awesome. Yeah, I noticed a lot more creators are going to Kickstarter to to produce their own books instead of going through companies. So
yeah,
you think that's another avenue you might take in the future with some more creator-owned stuff?
yeah, absolutely, and even possibly looking at publishing overseas. Everything's on the table. I mean, I love European albums, and I love that format. I
Hmm.
think it would be fun to publish over there as well, first and not second.
Yeah. Well, as long as whatever you put out that we get to see too.
Of course.
I don't want to miss out on anything. Yeah, I've been a fan of yours for years, so I just want to say thank you for taking the time to sit down and speak with us, especially because of all the technical issues that we had with the site here with recording. So thank you for bearing with us while we got everything done. And
Oh, it's happy to talk to you. It's had a lot of fun. Thank you.
thank you. And I'd love to reach out to you, around May or a little bit after that when your new book comes out, and we've had a chance to get a couple issues and read them. Have you come on and talk with us again so we can like really get into talking about that once it's out there.
Absolutely. I'd be happy.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, everybody, like I said, check him out. Below there's his Instagram and his Facebook, and of course you could check him out on Blue Sky. And for us, make sure you check us out on the codexstation.com. You can get to meet all of the creators for the page. You can get links to all of our different socials. You get links to the merch that we have up there, and just come and get to know us. And again, we want to say a very big thank you to JG Jones for taking the time out of his day to sit down and speak with us. Wish you nothing but the most amount of success possible on your upcoming works, and really can't wait to read that series come May.
And thanks so much. It's good to be back and working on continuity stuff again. So I
Yeah.
hope I don't let you down. I hope you enjoy it.
Oh, I'm sure I will. All right, everyone. So thank you for joining us. And until next time, I will catch you by the spinner rack.
Ciao.